Welcome or welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Let's go over to Italy today, and we're joined by Emmy. Emmy, I don't know much about you, but I do know that we're both very interested in linguistic acquisition, education, traveling the world, work, and everything like that. And you've had a lot of interesting experiences. So over the next hour and a half, I'm going to basically mute my end of the microphone to allow you to answer the question I always like to ask. Who is Emmy? What can you tell us about yourself? And basically walk through the whole life journey if you want about all the different experiences you've had and all the educational things you've done all over the world. So why don't you just start by walking through the conversation and we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thank you for this great opportunity to introduce a little bit myself. Well, who is Amy? Amy is basically a crazy, wild Italian blind. I mean, from Italy, but I would say that I'm a citizen of the world because I've traveled a lot since my childhood. In which my passion for languages manifested itself. I mean, I really liked. Basically, I started traveling when I was a child with my family, I can say, and my curiosity was to understand what people tell in different languages. So basically, I don't know, probably I loved gossip or I don't know, but I really, and sometimes I enjoyed inventing different languages, talking to myself or, and inventing different languages. Then I started school and I started, of course, we have English in Italy at school. So I started to study English. Then I decided to study a second language, Spanish. Then a third one, German. And then I tried to study a little bit of Portuguese, but just a little bit. And I can say that I can speak a little bit of German, but not very much. I admit. So after my high school, I attended a university program in Italy. I attended regular school, even if I'm blind since birth. I've also attended regular school because in Italy, special education programs ended in 1975. So they closed this kind of program, and basically even if you are disabled, you are integrated in regular classes. So I attended regular school, and then when I had to choose my faculty at university, I chose a program called Languages and Foreign Literatures. We major in English and Spanish. So I got my degree. That was a doctoral degree. Then I worked a little bit in Italy. And one day I had the great opportunity to work in the U.S. In the U.S., I worked for a while, and then I decided to get a second degree because my Italian doctoral degree was not valid. I mean, it was valid, but just as a bachelor degree. So I got a master's degree, and then I worked as a TA at university in the U.S. So this is more or less my career. I worked as a translator. I worked as a private teacher. I worked as a travel agent for people with disability. I have a lot of hobbies and interests. And okay, you told me about my travels. Yes, as I told before, I've traveled a little bit all over the world. I was very lucky because my a couple of uncles of mine, actually, my father's sister and her husband, they were entrepreneurs, and due to their work, they had to travel around the world, and they took me with them. Sometimes I had a nanny, sometimes I didn't. So I could have a lot of experiences, and every place where every place I visited, and every every single person I met during these travels reached me in a different way. So even if some cultures were very different than mine, even if some ideas or opinions sometimes were different than mine, I really felt enriched by any experience I had, by any person I met during my trips. So I really consider myself very lucky. Then I started to travel by myself. Actually, I worked abroad, studied, and lived abroad. As I told you, I did it in the U.S., so as in Spain, where I studied and lived for some years. I lived in England for a while. I lived in some countries, and of course, I'm very proud to be Italian. I'm very proud of my culture and of my language, of my habits. Actually, travels uh, do not necessarily change yourself. They just enrich yourself. So basically, they helped me. They helped me to grow up, to be more aware of many things, of many countries, of many cultures, and to be the woman I'm today. So yes, this is what travels have given me. And but basically they did not change me. I mean, I'm the same stubborn, the same strong person that probably I was when I was a teenager or when I was a child. I don't know.
You know, I think everything you've said so far has really spoken to me beautifully. And you are so right, that people never change and that, travel does not change us. It simply enriches us. And that's you're absolutely right, Emmy. And that the fact that you said that is a very brilliant point. It's a very, that's a very subtle thing to notice. So let's, kind of unfold the journey from where it all began, which is that for one thing, you were motivated enough to attend university. And not only were you motivated enough to attend university, but you were motivated and inspired enough to study languages and literature. And the overarching question here, and as a teacher, I will teach you French, I will teach you English, but I will never teach you motivation because I cannot teach anyone to be motivated. So oftentimes when people have this sort of within themselves, this sort of fire of motivation, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Where did you get that idea to be motivated from? I'm sure that something happened probably when you were a teenager that kind of taught you, I need to be a little bit more motivated, probably. So
Well,
what happened? Because
well,
something did. What happened?
well, what you say is very true because without a motivation, you cannot go on with your career, in my opinion. So you need to have a strong reason that pushes you into a career. Otherwise, sometimes studying is very hard and everything becomes very boring and so on. Actually, it happened to me because my first choice, you should know that my first choice when I decided to attend university, unfortunately, were not what I said. So were not languages and foreign literature. But because my father's dream was was me to be a lawyer, my first choice was to study law. And as I told sometimes, I mean, it was very dry for me. It was too poor for me. I didn't have any motivation, any reason to go on with that, except for not disappointing my father. So, so I passed some exams, but everything was very boring. I mean, I sat down there and I thought about, I was concentrating on a lot of different things except for, what I was doing at that moment. And at a point, after passing some exams, after a year, I took the courage. I decided to talk to my parents, and I said that I wanted to change. I wanted to take my old love back, my old passion back. So languages. I mean, so what I said was, it's okay. Actually, you can ask me why I didn't take languages at first. Well, there was my father's dream, but there was something else. That was a bad relationship with my with one of my languages teacher when I was attending high school. So because of that, I decided to give up with languages for a while and to follow what my father wanted for me. But, love is love, passion is passion. So I had to go back to it. And what motivated me to attend university? It's a good question, because actually you can be a very good English speaker, a very good French speaker without studying, you can be very good at languages without studying. But unfortunately, if you want to work with languages, you need this piece of paper called degree. It can be a master degree, it can be a PhD, it can be whatever. But you need a piece of paper that certificates that you are a professional, that you are excellent in that subject. So basically, I needed this piece of paper. So as when I went to the US, I mean, I had a doctoral degree. I had a doctorate in Italy, but it wasn't valid in the US. It didn't allow me to work as a teacher at university, at least. So if you do not have this title, and if you cannot work, you have to achieve it. And to achieve it, you have to study. This was my motivation. And then something else was that I was really interested in foreign literatures, and I hoped that through my professors and through their suggestions, I could learn much more about them. Actually, there is a fact. I mean, if you limit your experience just to study, it risks to become very poor. Because in my opinion, at least in Europe, I don't know in other countries, at least, no, I wouldn't say in Europe, because I wouldn't like to generalize, but in Italy, at least in Italy, the English, for example, that we learn at school is very different than the English that you can hear in those England, Great Britain, or the US, or, it's very different because basically you learn grammar, you learn how to have how to get a formal conversation, but you do not learn the slangs. You do not learn uh, sometimes the pronunciation of the words they give you is pretty different from a teacher to another one. So, in my opinion, the best way to learn a language, the best way to immerse yourself, to deep yourself into a language is to take a flight and go directly to the country where this language is spoken. This is the best way to um, to be part of this, to be part of that community, to be fluent at that language.
You're very right. You are 100% correct. You have to go to the country, and that's what I've done to learn French over time. So you're very, very right about that. But I also want to, kind of rewind a little. Something you said that you weren't, your father wanted you to study law and you weren't really interested in law. I can understand that. That law for most people would be kind of dry and boring, but I actually kind of like law. There's a lot of different things you can do in that field too. So that is a reasonable thing for a blind person to achieve, to be a lawyer in a country. That's a reasonable job, I think. So, but I understand that you didn't like it and didn't want that, so that's fine. But it's law is also very interesting, to study about philosophy and society and things like that.
In
Yeah.
my opinion,
Hmm.
Shakespeare's sonnets are much better. But just to make an example.
Well, that's good. That's a good example. Okay. All right. So fine. So you've explained that you have, in the Italian system you have this PhD in languages and foreign literature. So if you're going to focus on languages and then foreign literature, so like how was that degree set up, and what languages did you need to become fluent in? And then for the literature end, what exactly did you learn in the foreign literature section of that degree?
Well, basically now, I I think that the system has changed because I mean, when I studied was pretty different, but basically I took two languages instead of than one as a major, and I took English and Spanish. So I had um, Spanish literature, English literature. I had German in my high school, and I decided not to take German again. And Portuguese, no, Portuguese, I learned a little bit of Portuguese by myself just for a personal reason because um, I had some friends from Brazil, and so I needed to study Portuguese a little bit to just to speak to them. But yeah, no, basically, you I mean, in my program, I've learned literature, I've learned phonetic, I've learned grammar, I've learned linguistic. Uh, what else? Other subjects. I mean, how to teach languages to your students, more or less. And it was pretty good. I really enjoyed my program because I didn't know many authors. It was interesting because, for example, related to English literature, we studied British literature, but we studied American literature and American culture as well. So, but uh, this this was, I mean, this was optional, so you could choose to study American literature as well or not to choose it. So it was, I mean, but yes, I mean, I really enjoyed it. And I think that what I studied at university, I mean, what I've learned about literature helped me um, with me with my career. So it was very helpful, even if at first my motivation, I mean, part of my motivation was just to have this piece of paper that said that certificated me to be able to work with languages.
Sure, absolutely. So I teach English every day, and occasionally when students come to me and want help with French, I'm more than happy to help them with French. So how do we teach languages? Let's really break down the ingredients of actually teaching languages, because this is where it gets very interesting. So how does that work, by the way?
Well, it depends. As you know, as you probably know, if you teach languages in the U.S. at university, you have basically you have most of the things already prepared. I mean, you have a syllabus to follow, you have a curriculum, and you have even some material ready to, I mean, ready to use. So basically, you just give some explanations, but you do not have to decide what you want to do because everything is prepared, everything is decided, and basically every day you you are perfectly aware of what you can teach and what you do not have to teach because everything is decided by somebody else. In Italy is pretty different. You are free to teach whatever you wish. I mean, there are some programs that are uh, standard programs uh, decided from the state. I mean, like this year you have to more or less the program should be this more or less the grammar you have to teach until I don't know. I just make a stupid example. For example, the first year um, you have to teach simple past if you are I'm talking about English, that is your subject. Simple past, present perfect, and simple past. Then the second year, I'm not talking about university. In this case, I'm talking about high school programs. Um, the second year, the third year, and so on. If you are a private teacher, like I'm working at the moment, I'm very free, and actually I'm very flexible. I try to adapt my program uh, to my students' needs and to my students' desire. Basically, there is a technique that I use that is probably you know it, that is the task based, and the material that I choose is material taken from the reality, and basically, for example, my first question to a student is, which are your interests? So based on his or her interests, I try to build up a lesson in the way that the student can be involved in it and can be focused on it. So this is more or less how I work. I am then it depends. I mean, if I have a single student or a group of students, I encourage, for example, if I have a group, I encourage them to work in pairs. I encourage them to have conversations. I encourage them um, to write little compositions. I mean, and to read, but to read what they prefer. For example, it can be a magazine, it can be, and then they have to. Sometimes I ask them to give me a feedback, writing a little review about what I have what I have read. So it's a very, and then I try to create a relaxing and familiar environment that is very important for students. Um sometimes I organize little games, for example, games based on words to learn new words in the target language. Sometimes I, for example, propose a song to analyze, both in grammar and in vocabulary. Sometimes, I mean, I try to do different activities every time, not to be, boring.
Sure. Yeah, no, you really have to diversify your portfolio with people, and figuring out what someone wants to learn is painfully difficult. That's one of the hardest things ever, because it's not a simple matter of, well, what do you want to learn? It's a matter of figuring out what you want to learn in that language, so it's kind of hard to tell, in some cases. So do you tend to teach people English? Can people come to you for, do you do like private English instruction?
In general, I teach Spanish and Italian. I give
Excellent.
private lessons of, yeah. I
Great.
had some students that needed elementary English, but in
Hmm.
general, I I teach Spanish because I'm bilingual in Spanish, and
Sure.
Italian because, of course, is my first language.
Right,
So,
right. So, okay, but so let's say, for example, that someone comes to you and wants to learn Italian with you. So, would that person be, for example, a foreigner living in Italy who needs to learn Italian? Like, who would your student base be when you teach Italian?
well, I had a couple of Americans, but very few students from the US because actually, if they learn Italian, it's just because, for example, they need it for their work or something like that, or because they are preparing for a trip to Italy. So sometimes I have to, uh, as I told you, I have to adapt my way of teaching. For example, if you have a woman of 75 that wants to learn Italian, you can't you can't make many grammar lessons. So you focus your teaching more in vocabulary. And for example, you try to teach simple expressions, but that, that make her uh, in the condition of surviving if she goes to Italy. I don't know. You teach her some typical Italian dishes that she can find, for example, written in a menu at a restaurant. You teach her how to say, please, thank you, I like this, I don't like that, or excuse me, or uh, you teach her how to more or less how to ask for and how to understand information. So you have really to adapt yourself and your knowledge to different persons, to different people that you can meet. Actually, you asked me about my students. Well, basically, the, many people from abroad want to learn Italian because they are fascinated by Italian culture, Italian authors, but most of them because they want to visit my country. So basically, yes, my lessons are for people that want to visit my country. Then there are other kind of students that need, for example, to take Spanish because they didn't pass an exam at university. So uh, this program and this way of teaching are stricter and are more rigorous, I would say. I mean, I focus on grammar. I focus on, then it depends of the subject that they need to learn, if it's just languages or if it includes literature or, so um, mm, it, I don't know, my work varies.
Yeah,
varies.
yeah, yeah. Mine does too. You brought up something very subtle about linguistics and the acquisition of language, and I'm learning this now that I'm can truly say that je parle français couramment. I speak fluently now, And now that I do, when I speak to French people, they're able to teach me how to use the language. There's a subtle difference between excusez-moi and pardon.
Exactly,
There's
exactly.
right. But then you have to learn. So, well, since there's a difference between excusez-moi et pardon, then how do you tell when to say which one? Or the other one is, just to give one example, I was speaking with a French person. Now, some of these words might sound vaguely familiar to you, and in French, we're going to talk about bothering. So the verb to bother or annoy or to distract or to bother. Mostly, we would say déranger, right? And that's generally what we say in French for déranger. But then I was speaking to someone in French about this, and we were talking about people and how, sometimes it's important not to allow yourself to be distracted by other people. And then I used déranger, and then they said, no, it's embêter. And I said, why is it embêter? It says because, well, embêter is for when people are bothering you, and déranger is for when a situation is bothering you. So when you really speak a language, you not only have to speak the language, but you have to know how to socially navigate the language to figure out, well, which verbs go with the person, which verbs go with situation, which verbs go with emotion. And then you have to over time get it all straight and match it up all the way. It's a very, very subtle
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's very subtle.
but
Yeah.
personally, I think that unfortunately, if you don't live for a while or if you don't visit the country where this language is spoken, you can't pick up these little differences. Because, for example, when I went to the US, um, I learned that South American Spanish was different than
Oh,
Peninsular
absolutely.
Spanish.
Sure.
So, and now I can also distinguish a British English native speaker than an American native speaker or a person that comes from, I don't know, Alabama, where I lived for a while, Georgia, from, Philadelphia, or I don't know, Michigan, because you really, I don't know, you really get involved into this fascinating world that
You're
languages
so right.
is.
Were you
So,
able to, I can't help myself I can't resist. So were you able to understand the people in Alabama with their Southern accent or did you have a really hard time at first understanding the
well,
Southern
yeah,
dialect?
the
Yeah,
very first time was really hard. Actually, I put
sure.
myself in discussion. I thought that I didn't speak and I didn't understand English at all. I called desperately my American mommy in Pennsylvania. I mean, the person that I call my American mommy, but yeah, she's not my mom. Anyway, I said to her, listen, here I cannot understand anything. I don't know how to survive here because I can make questions, but I cannot understand what they answer me. So I was really, I could understand TV, of course. I mean, I turned the TV on and I could understand, but because of course, they speak a standard language. So, with a standard accent, but I could not understand anybody there. This lasted, I don't know, I think a month or 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, more or less. Then I started to understand. I started to detect the little difference, the little things, and then I really enjoyed. I mean, I really like to be there. I really like to be, and if you live in the South, you immediately become part of the family in any family you are introduced. So it's great. It's fantastic. But actually, I really, I have been really good in, um, I mean, everywhere. Yes, everywhere. So,
Wonderful. So where in Alabama were you living? And so were you teaching? What job did you get? How did that work, by the way?
well, I was attending a master in Hispanic studies, and meanwhile, I was working as a teacher at that university. It was, yes, it was in Alabama.
Okay, great. Great. So, in other words, are you saying that the University of Alabama had this Hispanic Studies program? Exactly where in Alabama? Like what university? Like what program was it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was not the University of Alabama, but yes, they had this program. They have this Master in Hispanic Studies because my initial intention was to attend the master and then to go ahead with a PhD in Spanish. But unfortunately, because of COVID, I decided to go
Yeah.
back to Italy because I wanted to,
No
just in case,
kidding.
I wanted to die close to my family.
No,
And I,
yeah, really, no. As we say, as we exaggerate the expression, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, as we say in
yeah,
English, yeah.
exactly,
And
exactly.
and I
So,
think in reality, in the greater stretch of the imagination, we have all been derailed by philosophically. We've all been affected by that. I mean, life would have happened very differently if that hadn't happened, and that's an overstatement. Or, well, actually, no, that's not an overstatement. That's exactly wrong. See, even native speakers make English mistakes. That would be not an overstatement. That would be a understatement. But I think everything would have gone. Obviously, everything would have gone differently. So I think a lot of people felt that they needed to shift their plans accordingly to that, and everybody was held
yeah,
back.
I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
my contract was ended at that time, and I had another job. I mean, I could get another job, but
Mm-hmm.
then I decided to go back to Italy because it was too risky to stay there. I didn't know what was going on, and so I decided to go back with the intention to maybe to go back in the future, or I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in 2020, uh, in 2021, I mean, no, it was December 2020 when I decided to go back to Italy. I went back for Christmas. I, yes, and, but then I
Right.
went back to
Sure.
the US a
Yeah.
couple of times. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. Yeah. But no, you're very right. So in the end, when you put all these things together and you just have you're a wealth of knowledge, obviously. So what do you think, considering that I only speak English and French, what do you think of the Spanish speaking world and Spanish speakers and that whole the whole Spanish world? What is what have you learned about their society and their opinion and your opinion of that? Yeah.
Well, I've lived in Spain for some years, in the city of Alicante. I was in the south, more or less in the south. And I was okay there. Spanish and Italian culture are pretty similar with these little difference, but the little differences, but pretty similar. When I went to the U.S., I met another kind of culture that was South American culture, and actually, I don't know where I lived, especially in the South. I saw that Hispanic community is pretty well integrated, uh, but some there are some differences in, of course, in the vocabulary um, between Peninsular Spanish and Hispanic, or I don't know, South American Spanish. You can call it uh, in. I mean, you can call it how you want, but no, it was great. I mean, there are some differences in culture, of course, because Spain is close to Italy and South America is very far away. So what is I don't know, they are pretty different, but I was fine. I was fine with both with people from Spain and with people from South America. So
Cool.
my experience
Beautiful.
was positive.
Well, that's great. We have a family friend of ours who is a no, I cannot at this particular moment I cannot expand on the story, but I can give you the surface. He is a missionary and he lives in Colombia and he has to learn he's been learning Spanish for a few years And he's always told me, this family friend has always mentioned that the Colombian dialect of Spanish is like totally different. They don't even have like vous plural, they don't have you plural and things like
Oh
that.
yeah,
They
yeah.
apparently in Colombia, and the Colombians are very proud. The Colombians speak their own, they have their own, not only do they have their own accent, but they have their own structure of the language. They basically have their own Spanish dialect that they speak
Yeah,
amongst themselves.
they
Yeah.
have different words as well. For
Totally different
example,
vocab. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. For example, I've lived with a Colombian couple for a while in North Carolina, and actually one morning they offered me some tintico, and I thought, I mean, in peninsular Spanish, tintico is red wine. So I was very surprised. I said, okay, I like red wine, but not at 7 in the morning. But but I discovered it
What we drink what wine you wait you're Italian. You can drink we can drink wine any time's the time for a glass of
well,
rosé. Bien sûr.
it's not very true. I mean, I
Yeah, I know.
like
I know.
wine, but
By the way,
for dinner or
I'm a very I can be very sarcastic. But
no,
yes. So
it's good.
what did
It's
it turn
okay.
out to be? What in the end what was that at
Well,
7 in the
was
morning?
just coffee, was just a cup of coffee in the in Colombian dialect. So I said, "Oh yes, it's coffee. Yeah, sure." But I thought
Why
at
didn't
first I
why
thought it
didn't they
was
just say
wine
something that why didn't they just say a word that somewhat resembled cafe or something like that?
because they use Colombian dialect and
Yeah.
they use the Colombian dialect and they
Hmm.
said to me tintico to be more familiar, to be more informal probably. But the problem was that I understood something that was not. So,
Ah, yeah. Yeah, generally, I mean, it depends on the country where you speak. I mean, every country that speaks French develops their own vocab a little bit, but not quite as much as Spanish because there's not quite as much of a difference. With French, French is spoken more, I don't want to say universally, but there's less, I mean, there are vocab changes from country to country, but less of them. Yeah, a little
yeah,
bit
what I
less. Hmm.
noticed about French is that it's a little bit different in the accent. For example, a French Canadian is different from a French from Paris, and
Sure.
French from Paris is just a little bit different from a person from Belgium, so
Hmm.
or from
Definitely.
Martinique. The African French is uh, has a very different accent.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Oh
I
yeah,
love hearing them
sure.
speak. It's so, and I can understand. I basically understand everybody in French for the most part, unless they use a weird word that I don't know or that's a specific regional word or a regional expression. But generally, French, if you speak Parisian, the main capital dialect, then you can be understood
Hmm.
anywhere around la francophonie. But if you have not extensively studied the way the other person speaks French in their own community, then you might have a hard time understanding them. So it's very silly. They would understand me, but I wouldn't understand the answers in some cases, depending on what vocab they use. But that's deeply fascinating. A lot of, Emmy, a lot of silly and funny and cute things happen when we travel. So what was the funniest thing that ever happened to you when you were living in the States, whether it was Alabama or wherever it was?
Well, okay. The very first time, because as I said, in Italy, the English that we learn is basically British English. Okay,
Sure. Hmm.
so one of one of the most amusing thing that happened to me was okay. One day I was at lunch at a restaurant and the women next to me, the ladies, old ladies, started to talk about a ladies' room or a restroom. And okay, I used the word bathroom to, so I haven't used restroom before or ladies' room before. So I really didn't know, and I could not imagine what kind of room um, it was. So I
I
thought,
get
oh
it.
my
That's pretty
gosh,
cool. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. That's a
what
good
I
point.
thought
Yeah.
was that a restroom. was basically a room full of, filled with sofas or
Uh-huh.
uh, couches where people could take a nap or something like that. So, okay, during this lunch, at the end of the lunch, of course, the lady said, okay, now we stand up, we go to the restroom, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have to use, I mean, I didn't need to use the restroom actually, but I said to my American mommy, oh, please, let me come with you. I want to see the restroom. You know, I was so
Oh.
ridiculous. I was so,
Oh, that's okay. We all have these embarrassing moments when we travel. These silly, that's both silly and endearing and cute and a little awkward, but that's mostly sweet and silly. That's okay. And
yeah. And
so,
then she
and so
took me
through
in front
learn,
of the door.
yeah.
I opened the door and what I saw very disappointed was
Uh,
just a restroom. And I
yeah.
said, oh, this is a restroom? Okay, we have in Italy as well. You know? So,
It's cool. But in French, we're trained as French speakers to say où sont les toilettes? Where are the toilets? Now think about it
yeah.
this way. If you said that in American English, and I've noticed that European people do it, and I don't correct them because I know where they're getting it from. Oftentimes in Europe, if someone speaks English as a second language and they know you're in a group and they say if anyone needs to go use the bathroom or the lavatory, sometimes if they don't speak as well, they would say in a tour. I've heard it even in groups of people that, and
Yeah,
to an American, it sounds
exactly.
very, I know where they get it from, but to an American, it sounds silly. They say, and if anyone needs the toilet, and they always use the word toilet as in, because the word toilet is used very commonly to
See, yeah,
expressively
you're
mean
right.
that. Whereas toilet actually in American English is used mainly by children. So it sounds
Yeah,
very childish in Europe when they say, do you, do
sure,
you, do you need the
sure.
toilet? You know, but that's just the word they know and it comes from les toilettes, but they don't know any better. Another,
Yeah, but
yeah.
France has another, France restrooms, unfortunately, have another peculiarity that I could experience, and this is another embarrassing experience of my life.
Uh-huh.
I think the most one,
Uh-huh.
because as you know, probably, restrooms in France are separate. So basically, you do not have a door into another one, but you have three doors, one one next to the other one. So basically, at this hotel, I was spending some holidays with my uncles, and I had my private room with my private restroom that had three different doors, one next to the other one. The shower door, where of course, you found your shower. The Another door with the sink and the mirror inside, and another door with the toilet into it. So, okay, I had these three doors, and I was going to take a shower. The problem was that my room had, of course, another door to go out, to get out of the room. And that door was exactly the door I opened to go into the shower. So I get out of my room completely naked. It
Oh
was
God.
morning. Yeah, I was 18. Uh, I was praying nobody passed, and a waiter with these carriages with laundry. Anyway, he was passing, and
Oh
he
my
said,
God.
"Bonjour, mademoiselle," and I didn't answer. I mean, I could not. I just shut the door and I went into the shower completely ashamed, completely embarrassed because,
There's a discreetly good thing about making that mistake in France about expressing about having an experience like that. The French, you don't need to be quite as embarrassed as you were because the French are a lot less embarrassed about the body than other cultures. So
yeah, I
that's
understand, but
yeah. But it's still embarrassing. It's still
yeah,
wrong. I know, I get
exactly.
that. Yeah. It's still a problem, but at least you should know to put a little to put you at ease about that. At least you should know that that's less of an issue in France when people are a little bit more relaxed about accidentally showing their body once a year. People are a little bit more or less self-conscious about that. I'll tell you one of my embarrassing and silly,
Sure.
because you opened up, so it's only fair for me as the host to tell you. So once I was traveling with a group of people, and we were in Germany, and I was talking to this blind guy in Germany, and we were sitting around, having a meal or having a drink, which only added to the tasteless nature of this mistake. And I was telling him, oh, I'm a linguist. At that point, I wasn't a podcast or talk show host then, but I was like, oh, I love languages. I teach English and blah, 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 blah. So what do you do? I said, and he said, oh, well, I'm a massage therapist. Now remember, it's Germany, and he was a German citizen who spoke Deutsch. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Some blind people do that in the United States, yeah." And then here's the slip and fall. And then I said, "Yeah, there's a lot of blind people that work as a masseuse in the United States."
Wow. Yeah, oh my
And I
gosh.
didn't know. And then there was so you picked up on it. Then there was an awkward pause. I took a sip of beer or something, and he said something like, like I said, I work as a massage therapist here in Germany. And he said, I don't think you should call me a prostitute in German.
Mamma mia. Oh, sorry. My gosh.
All I did was put
Yeah.
food. And I couldn't really say sorry. So I just put food in my mouth and pretended I didn't understand. But now I know that word masseuse is only to be used in the United States and is not to be used in other countries. So certain words have different connotation too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there are some little cultural questions that, make you feel a little bit uncomfortable or a
Right.
little bit
But that's how
embarrassed.
we learn, but that's how we learn languages, and how we learn social behavior
Exactly.
is
Oh,
by making
yeah.
is by having these silly things happen.
Sure.
And the best part about traveling is when you meet people like that or have all these silly experiences, the person is embarrassed like you are for a minute, but then everybody forgets about it, and then you never see the person again. So, you have to slip and fall like that and realize, well, no, that word isn't used in that way. Or in Germany, they only use massage therapist. Or in America, we call them masseuses. And then if you're, to be graphic, the other type of massage, quote unquote, the happy ending type, then we use
Sure.
then we use
Yeah.
other words to describe that classification. But no, but that's a famous one. But no, there's a lot of silly things that happen to us in French. My parents I mean, my father and I, we can speak fluently, but my mother doesn't like to speak. But once we were in a restaurant, and she kept on ordering beer, and she doesn't drink beer. Eventually, we asked her why did you order beer, and then she said, no, I don't want beer, I want butter. And she kept on saying bière when she wanted to say buh.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
or
Oh my
even
gosh.
slight pronunciations can be totally confusing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happened to me with cafe au lait. I thought, I don't know, we were in this elegant hotel
Uh-huh.
in Paris, and I saw the people, I heard the people ordering café au lait, but I
Mm-hmm.
thought that café au lait was like in Spanish, café au lait. So when it was my turn, I said,
Mm-hmm.
café au lait. And my uncle and my aunt under the table kicked me because it was inappropriate, but I didn't know the meaning of. I thought that it was just a cup of coffee instead of coffee with milk, but so.
Right, right. You're really supposed to say café crème is the more polite way that you're supposed to say. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, but I thought that ole was like, oh yeah, that,
Of well
like
of
in
well you know
Spanish,
you know
like,
in your Spanish and in Italian the word is probably similar. Lei means milk, as in lei, milk. But yes, but again, it's about the social connotations, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
really supposed to say, je voudrais café au lait, s'il vous plaît. Or no, no, je voudrais café crème. See, if you say it quickly, you can get away with it. But yes, when you're trying to be respectful, je voudrais café crème, s'il vous plaît, like that. You're
Yeah, but
supposed to
my
say
tone
it
was so
gently.
loud because I thought that ole was just an expression that determine happiness, like in Spanish or like in Italian. Yeah.
Okay. No. So you thought that the ole meant
See,
yes.
exactly. Because ole, if you speak Spanish or if you speak Italian, it's like, ole, this is wonderful. Ole, this is, it's
Oh,
like,
so that's the
so when
okay.
they
So you're saying that in your language, the ole is the ooh la la, or I like it, or like that. That's the vocalization for how.
exactly. So when
Ah,
I heard them to say ole, I didn't think because of course I didn't speak French, so I didn't think that
right.
ole was with milk.
It
I
is.
thought that ole was an expression to say I agree or I'm happy to
Hmm.
get it or whatever, but not with milk. So I
Right,
said
right.
ole in a very loud tone, and
That's
it wasn't
something that I've had to work
inappropriate.
on too with being a French speaker. Is I've had to learn to just speak naturally and not to speak too loudly or not to emphasize too much because oftentimes when you speak a second language, you get a little bit nervous and we all do. And you
Hmm.
oftentimes would overemphasize syllables and we all do it. So I
Because you
just
need
learned
more year. I mean, you need to stay there
a
for
lot
more
of years,
years, and then
right?
you acquire these natural
Nuance,
way of
the picking up on the nuances and these
exactly
different
because
weird words. Yeah.
is what happened to me with English. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm always thinking about grammar, about the best expression to use,
Hmm.
and I never, I don't know, I'm never relaxed because
Uh-huh.
I keep thinking while I'm speaking.
Hmm.
In Spanish, is pretty different, but because of the similarity between Spanish and Italian, I mean, uh, uh, these languages are very interesting because they are pretty similar, but not very much, actually.
Hmm.
Spanish grammar is more similar to English grammar than to Italian grammar. For example, to say, uh, me he vestido, I've dressed in Spanish, you use the verb to have, like in English, and not the verb to be, as in Italian. In Italian, me he vestido is translated with mi sono vestito. So using the verb to be instead of, I mean,
Mm,
it's like I'm dressed and not
right.
I
So,
dress.
right, yeah. So they do that thing in your Italian language where you have to pair, you need like the auxiliary verbs, either the avoir to have or the être to be to make the sentence. Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of French verbs that are like that where you have to learn which ones go with to have and which ones go with to make and which ones go all together. You have to learn how to put it all together over it takes a long time to get your brain to do it.
Oh
Over a lot of
yeah, oh
speaking.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you did. It's certainly not easy, and your English is really good. So another subtle thing that you said that I think a lot of blind people, and I know I'm not afraid to admit my struggles. I struggle with this because it's hard. You said that you've learned a lot about understanding that when you travel around the world, you have to some extent, you have to kind of accept other culture and sort of accept other social norms, correct? And so,
Oh yeah, sure.
well, but that's kind of hard to do. That's not quite as simple as you might think. So, what are some cultural norms, or what are some? I guess, what advice do you have, Emmy, for other blind people who, want to travel but are afraid of how they're going to be able to embrace the culture of the receiving country? What advice would you have for that?
Hmm. Well, you have to be very open-minded. You have to be open to a variety of questions about your blindness as well, about how you do this, how you do that, how you can do it, how you could, because people are very ignorant. I mean, it's not an insult. It's just, something true. And they are very curious. And especially when they see a blind person travel by himself or
Mhm.
herself, they are very curious to know how we can do it. And for them is, like a great thing, a great deal. And they want to know if we are able, how much independent we are and whatever. So don't be afraid. Try to, because in any case, um, I don't know, maybe this person will become a friend of yours. Maybe you discover to have something or more than something in common with this person. So Don't be close-minded and try to be flexible. Try to adapt yourself. Try to adjust yourself in every place you visit because, every place can enrich you in a positive or in a negative way. It doesn't matter. Then, at the end of your trip, you will get your conclusions. But before, try to be flexible and try to make a sort of compromise between your culture, your way of thinking, your way of feeling, and the culture that you find in a different country, because it's a question of respect. And if you do it, the people, the people that you will meet there, do very appreciate your effort, do very appreciate what you are doing. So
we would say they will appreciate you. Absolutely. Yeah. You're very right. You're
yeah,
very, very
exactly.
right. Yeah. It's extremely, extremely accurate. I think that covers a lot of that stuff, and we'll circle back to that. But something else that you have delved into, you've also delved into YouTube. You know that we aren't going to shy away from you being able to promote your channel and what you do. So why don't we kind of shift over to that for a few moments? Why don't you tell us
Well,
about
this
your
is something
YouTube and your knowledge?
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something crazy that I've just started. And it's a kind of, I know that some audio dramas exist. I wanted to do something different because basically audio drama is based on a group of people playing something. Well, what I'm doing is something different. I mean, I write my stories because, oh yeah, this is that I didn't mention is that I love to write. Actually, I wrote and published my first novel in 2021 in Italy. So I really like to write since my childhood, since when I learned to write. So I write my stories. Actually, what I'm proposing in my channel is a fantasy saga. And it is a channel based on immersive audio adventures. Basically, it's an audio channel where while you are reading the story, you also can hear sound effects. So you have some voices. The story is like an audio movie, a narrated, I would say, audio movie. And it's pretty cool because these stories are narrated in second singular person. So basically, you can directly feel the protagonist of the story. You can, and these, all the sounds proposed can help you to get into the atmosphere, into the ambience, into the, so it's a way, I mean, it's not just for blind people or visually impaired people, but I hope it could be a way to, I don't know, to make fully sighted people understand a little bit how our world and especially how our way of feeling works. Because this is something that I would like to, I wanted to touch before, but I didn't. So sometimes somebody told me, but why a blind person should travel? I mean, you can see everything. So how, I mean, which is the difference for you between the US and Italy or two cities in Italy or in a different country? Well, it's not just a question. If you just think about smells and sounds, you would be corny. And I wouldn't like to be corny. It's a different question. In my opinion, it's a deeper question. If a fully sighted person travels, she or he, I mean, will be immediately, I mean, we will immediately focus on uh, how the people dress, how the people walk. I don't know the economic and social of conditions of this country, and so on. A person, I mean, everything that is visual, they pay attention to everything is visual. To everything, yeah. If a blind person travels, our attention is different. We focus on what people think. We focus on different things, and we can perceive the sensitivity of the people of a country. That I don't know. We our perception is different, and probably you can understand what I'm trying to explain.
I actually understand, and I disagree a little bit. I think that you're on the right track with how blind people are more impacted by audio. And later today, another time, I'll send you a podcast that you would enjoy. I'll send you two things. I'll send you a podcast that we recorded in the past with a company here in the United States that produces audio dramas for blind people. You're going to love that one. And I'll also send you their information and their podcast for you to be able to springboard and get your own inspiration from them. Um, but you're partially right. I agree with you a lot that blind people might in fact be more oopla.
Hmm.
Oopla. We started the hold hold on just hold on for me one moment, as we say in the business. One second here, just hold on 1 second.
Yeah.